Yeah, you can start reading. Yes. It's 8 o'clock.
Thus, thus, the popular and mythical account of the Krishna avatar is that the unrighteousness of the Guru, as incarnated in Duryodhana and his brothers, became so great a burden to the earth that she had to call upon God to descend and lighten her load. Accordingly, Vishnu incarnated as Krishna, delivered the oppressed Pandavas, and destroyed the unjust Kauravas. A similar account is given of the descent of the previous Vishnu avatars of Rama to destroy the unrighteousness oppression of Ravana, of Parashurama to destroy the unrighteous license of the military and princely caste, the Kshatriyas, of the dwarf Vamana to destroy the rule of the Titan Bali. But obviously, the purely practical, ethical, or social and political mission of the avatar, which is thus thrown into popular and mythical form, does not give a right account of the phenomenon of avatarhood. It does not cover its spiritual sense. And if this outward utility were all, we should have to exclude Buddha and Christ, whose mission was not at all to destroy evildoers and deliver the good, but to bring to all men a new spiritual message and a new law of divine growth and spiritual realization. On the other hand, if we give to the word dharma only its religious sense, in which it means a law of religious and spiritual life, we shall indeed get to the kernel of the matter, but we shall be in danger of excluding a most important part of the work done by the avatar. Always we see in the history of the divine incarnation the double work, and inevitably, because the avatar takes up the working of God in human life, the way of the divine will and wisdom in the world, and that always fulfills itself externally as well as internally by inner progress in the soul and by an outer change in the life.
Okay, so the Indian uh, the tendency is always to uh, see everything in terms of the spiritual path, but often imagination gets mixed up in it, and that's why popular myth account. Okay, you have to try and explain to those who don't understand the spiritual elements. Try to explain through stories. So this is what Srimba is saying in this para, that there are many myths about the avatar. Those myths are stories made up to explain to simple people why the avatar comes down. But then it eliminates the real subtle aspect of the avatar good, the inner work that he does. The spiritual work is gone. Okay? I'm reading each sentence. Thus, the popular and mythical account of the Krishna avatar is that the unrighteousness of the Kurus, as incarnated in Duryodhan and his brothers, became so great a burden to the earth that she had to call upon God to descend and lighten her load. Okay. Obviously, the psychological unrighteousness of the Kurus does not include increase the load on the earth, but I suppose it is the psychological load that is there. So the earth itself had to call upon God to descend and lighten her load. Accordingly, Vishnu incarnated as Krishna, delivered the oppressed Pandavas and destroyed the unjust Kauravas. So, but even behind the myth, there is some symbolic truth in it. When because that yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati, so that corresponds to what the myth is. Too much, the unrighteousness increases too much, and then there is a demand, and the divine comes down to take care of that. But it's not only that. The spiritual work aspect is completely missed out in this myth. Okay. A similar account also is given for Rama. Okay. A similar account is given of the descent of the previous Vishnu avatars, okay? There are many of Rama, to destroy the unrighteous oppression of Ravana, of Parashurama, to destroy the unrighteous license of the military and princely state, the Kshatriyas, of the dwarf Vamana. All these are all the stories which are there. The avatars come down to destroy the enemy, the opposition to God. He has mentioned Rama, he has mentioned Parashurama, and he has also mentioned the Vamana avatar. All of them similar stories. They come down to relieve the good and destroy the evil. But obviously, the purely practical, ethical, and social and political mission of the avatar, which is thus thrown into popular and mythical form, does not give a right account of the phenomenon of avatarhood. Because he has told us what the phenomenon of the avatarhood is. There is an inner work and there is an outer work. Then there is the influence that the avatars leaves in the birth atmosphere. So all these things are there and takes it to a new level. These are the functions of the avatar. So all this popular story does not take into account all these things. Remember, then in the previous the purpose of avatarhood in the chapter, he has told us very clearly. Example to man, number one. Second, he leaves a divine vibration in the earth atmosphere. Third, he gives a method of ascent into the divine status. How to get out of ignorance. And then take evolution forward and prepare kingdom of God. So all these are the purposes of avatarhood, which are not given at all in these stories, popular stories. Okay. It does not cover its spiritual base, spiritual sense. And if this outward utility were all, outward utility destroying the evil and promoting the good. Okay. If that is all, then what's Swami saying? Let's see. If it does not cover spiritual sense, and if this outward utility were all, we should have to exclude Buddha and Christ. Interesting point. Because Buddha did not fight against anybody. Okay. Neither Christ, of course, did to a certain extent fight, because when he saw these merchants selling goods and all that near in the temple, he got angry. Okay. So there is some thing to that, but Buddha definitely had no enemies and he didn't kill anybody. So Swami is saying very interesting. His point is made very clear that Buddha and Christ are the subtle work of the avatar, what they do, that is not nothing in the very story. Buddha and Christ, whose mission was not at all to destroy evildoers and deliver the good, but to bring to all men a new spiritual message and a new law of divine growth and spiritual realization. On the other hand, if we give to the word dharma sansthapanarthaya, that's why if we give to the word dharma only its religious sense, in which it means a law of religious and spiritual life, we shall indeed get to the kernel of the matter, but we shall be in danger of excluding a most important part of the work done by the avatar. And what is that? That double work. The inner work and the outer work. The outer work only is being stressed by these stories. Always we see in the history of the divine incarnations the double work. The outer, the worldly, and the inner, the spiritual work. And inevitably, because the avatar takes up the workings of God in human life, the way of the divine will and wisdom in the world, and that always fulfills itself externally as well as internally by the inner progress in the soul of everybody, okay, and by outer change in the life. So it takes the evolution to the next step that is there, and also everybody is benefited by the descent of the avatar. Okay. Not only those who are near to the avatar. For instance, take Sri Aurobindo and mother. Okay. There were so many who were sadhaks here in the ashram. They are very close to Mother and Sri Aurobindo. But are they the only ones who benefit? No. Then there are others also who are devotees but living in Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, also many, even abroad. They also will benefit. What about those who don't even know about Sri Aurobindo? Even they will benefit because they have left the divine vibrations in the physical world. And when they are living these vibrations in the physical world, then those who are receptive will benefit. Those who are not receptive, even if they don't know about Mother and Sri Aurobindo, those who are receptive will benefit. You know, there are, Orwell has brought out many books in which those who came to Orwell, how they experience, suddenly they come to know about Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and just when by hearing the name of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, they get attracted. There is an attraction and they want to come to Pondicherry. Okay. So, this is many of, if you read those stories, you will see it will be surprising. In South America, in America, okay, in Europe, there are many cases. I know some cases also how they were helped even without seeing Mother and Sri Aurobindo. The one particularly, I was in touch with one person who is now in America, but she was in Spain earlier. Okay. When she was told that there is mother who helps by another couple who had come to Pondicherry, she was absolutely bowled over. And she is now a follower of mother. Mother more than Sri Aurobindo. Okay. She finds that mother is helping her in her daily life everywhere. So this is the point. There is the outer work and the inner work. The inner work, the spiritual influence left in the physical world for everybody, not only those who are close by. Okay? There is the work. Now, we can go to the next one. The next part. The avatar may descend.
Ranganath, I have a question before we go to the next one.
Yes, Sarika.
Since we are talking about avatarhood, Buddha and Mahavir both were contemporaries, no? And I want to know what Sri Aurobindo has said about the Mahavir.
I don't think the Mahavir is considered he is a Tirthankara. But usually in our Indian tradition, Mahavir is not spoken about as an avatar. Even Guru Nanak, he is also not considered an avatar. I have never heard of that. But he was a Tirthankara. Okay. And also, there is another aspect. In Jainism, there is no personal God. So, Tarika, if there is no personal God, there is a question of coming down is not even there. No? There is no personal God in Jainism.
But Ranganath, there is no question of personal God in Buddhism either.
That's right. That's right. That's true. That's an interesting point you have raised. But the work he did in the physical world was tremendous. Yeah, you have raised an interesting question, Pallavi. You have raised an interesting question. But normally, so maybe I shouldn't have mentioned the personal aspect. Because even the impersonal aspect, can it descend? I really don't. These are all questions which the human mental being cannot understand very easily. But one thing is sure. Yeah, tell me.
Maybe Buddha had lots of influence in the Indian subcontinent. That's why Buddha has been mentioned in Indian writings, and Sherwin has talked so much about Buddha and the effect of it. So it's taken as an avatar, but I don't think there is any mention of Mahavir in Sherwin's writing. You must have read it more. It would be interesting if there is. But Guru Nanak, he has mentioned about Sikhism, Guru Nanak, there are.
Yeah, but as an avatar?
No, not as an avatar. No.
Exactly.
He has discussed it.
Yes, certainly. He has discussed. But Mahavir, yeah, that's right. Maybe-
Rangada,
Yes.
if I add the Korean situation, the Buddhism is big here in Northeast Asia. I think, the ordinary Buddhist devotee, they would believe the personal God. I
Yes.
mean, the way Buddha, the way they believe in Buddha and turn to Buddha, and also the Bodhisattva, they are
Yes.
almost like gods. You're very personal. So
Yes.
in the devotional Buddhism, the sense of a personal God, I think perfectly makes sense.
Yes. When Pallavi said that, I did
But
not.
it is just,
Mm.
But there are
no,
two.
but it is like Buddha is the guru, not God,
No,
right?
no. Listen.
Yeah, that's the teaching. That's the Buddha's teaching. But the way people believe, the way people believe and behave, and that's very personal, very devotional, I think. And
There is.
people,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then
There is.
in Jainism also, Mahavir is considered like God, almost like God. He's prayed to and all. That
Yeah.
also is there in Jainism.
There are
Ah,
Similar thing.
24 Tirthankaras in the Jaina.
24 Tirthankars, yes. Like we have
And
10
in
avatars, they have
Is the
24
first.
Tirthankars.
That's right. He's the first.
in
Tirthankar means
Jainism,
they have already, they are no more incarnation of Tirthankar now. They are means they are remaining in soul in heaven. Beyond heaven, there is a place called Siddhapur. There they are now. They will no more take any birth now. There is no sorrow, no birth there. They are in their own Atma Chintan, Atma Bhav only.
And that tradition also is very corresponds to actual reality, because many souls, when they get liberation, they don't dissolve like in the Buddhist path, but they remain in the Brahma Loka, Ananda Loka. Okay, all these lokas are there; they remain there. So that's the path that the Tirthankaras are taking. But I wanted to tell one thing about Buddhism. There are two paths. Okay, there is a Hinayana and the Mahayana. And there in the Hinayana and Mahayana, there are differences are there. In the Hinayana, is the impersonal aspect. But the other one, they have the idea of compassion, and they believe that the physical world is not real. So there are a lot of differences. So maybe the Buddhistic path is not absolutely the mm, the impersonal aspect, not absolutely. Anyway, these are things that often we can't understand. And as Archana pointed out, okay, Buddha was in India, but Christ but he still mentions Christ very easily. No? So, anyway,
No,
these
but
are.
I wanted to know what Sri Aurobindo has he told anything about Jainism and Mahavir and all that? Has he?
I don't remember having read anything about it.
Okay.
But of course, I have not read all the 50 volumes, so I can't say. And because he makes references very often to very obscure facts in history. You'll be surprised as to how much history he knew about Europe, but also India. When he came back, he was studying all these things very much in Baroda. 13 years he was in Baroda, steeping himself in the Indian traditions, because he knew nothing about India when he came back. So he was learning all that, not only the Sanskrit language, but all the scriptures and all the history. So,
Tarika,
Yeah.
just 1 minute, Rangada. Tarika,
yeah.
maybe you could get what he has said on Jainism in the incarnate word. You go Google there, the incarnate word, you go to that site, and usually you can get the information if he has mentioned just by typing on Jainism or this thing.
Yeah.
I'll do it out later, and if I get anything, I'll share it with you.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's read the next
You
one.
know, regarding Guru Nanak, he received enlightenment in the Himalayas near the Valley of Flowers. There is a place known as Harminder Sahib, which is quite high up. There's a very beautiful, pristine lake and a Gurudwara. And you should see the old Sikh ladies climbing 14 kilometers up to Gangaria and then another 4 kilometers higher up to Harminder Sahib. And Of course, I just couldn't walk. I nicely sat on a horse and went. But these old ladies with sticks, they have such devotion to go to the place where Guru Nanak was enlightened. So I don't know what enlightenment he received, but he couldn't be called an avatar, but uh, a higher human being or a vibhuti.
For that, you will have to read Guru Granth. You'll have to know. Certainly, he was an enlightened being. There is no doubt about that. And it's interesting about Jainism and Sikhism, very interesting that the influences must have been very vast in India because there are Jain temples all over the south also. Not only in Rajasthan and also everywhere, all over. And also Gurudwara. Gurudwaras also are there everywhere, not only here, but even in the world. Okay. I don't know if Jain temples are there elsewhere in the world. I don't know.
No,
There are.
in Ellora and Ajanta also you have giant caves.
But that's in India, yeah. But I'm wondering whether Gurudwaras are abroad. They are very often abroad. Okay. In Singapore, it is certainly.
I have seen Jain temples abroad also.
Acha. It will be interesting to know where they are. So obviously, they have left a huge influence in India, all over there. Okay, so let's read the next one. The avatar may descend. We'll read, we have got time. We've got nearly 20 minutes. So, Archana, if you want the text, you can read.
Yes, Ranganath.
Okay.
The avatar may descend as a great spiritual teacher and savior, the Christ, the Buddha, but always his work leads after he has finished his earthly manifestation to a profound and powerful change, not only in the ethical, but in the social and outward life and ideals of the race. He may, on the other hand, descend as an incarnation of the divine life, the divine personality, and power in its characteristic action for a mission ostensibly social, ethical, and political, as is represented in the story of Rama or Krishna. But always then, this descent becomes, in the soul of the race, a permanent power for the inner living and the spiritual rebirth. It is indeed curious to note that the permanent, vital, universal effect of Buddhism and Christianity has been the force of their ethical, social, and practical ideals and their influence even on the men and the ages which have rejected their religious and spiritual beliefs, forms, and disciplines. Later, Hinduism rejected Buddha, his Sangha, and his Dharma, bears the ineffaceable imprint of the social and ethical influence of Buddhism and its effects on the ideas and the life of the race, while in modern Europe, Christian only in name, humanitarianism is the translation into the ethical and social sphere, and the aspiration to liberty, equality, and fraternity, the translation into the social and political sphere of the spiritual truths of Christianity. The latter, especially being affected by men who aggressively rejected the Christian religion and spiritual discipline, and by an age which, in its intellectual effort of the emancipation, tried to get rid of Christianity as a creed. On the other hand, the life of Rama and Krishna belongs to the prehistoric past, which has come down only in poetry and legend, and may even be regarded as myths. But it is quite immaterial whether we regard them as myths or historical facts, because their permanent truth and value lie in their persistence as a spiritual form, presence, influence in the inner consciousness of the race and the life of the human soul. Avatarhood is a fact of divine life and consciousness which may realize itself in, in an outward action, but must persist when that action is over and has done its work in a spiritual influence, or may realize itself in a spiritual influence and teaching, but must then have its permanent effect even when the new religion or discipline is exhausted in the thought, temperament, and outward life of mankind.
Yeah. Very interesting para what he's saying. Huh? So,
And gives answer to many of our questions.
Pardon?
And gives answer to many of our questions.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Very interesting para. Huh? So he's saying that there can be so many variations and so many effects, but the permanent effect is always there. And particularly in Christianity, in Europe, they reject religion, but they take the basic ideas, equality, fraternity, and liberty. They're taking the ideas and doing, but religion itself they want to discard. In other words, the influence is so large that it percolates even those who don't want to have anything to do with Christ. Very interesting part. And also Buddha. Okay? Hinduism rejected Buddha. There is no Buddhism in India as such. Very few Buddhas are there. Neruda was a Buddhist, by the way. Okay, Neruda was a Buddhist. The whole family. Okay. So, but the influence is there. No? That's the whole thing. Buddha's influence is there. Ineffaceable. It cannot be effaced. That's what's in the end. Permanent result is there. Very interesting. Let's go.
But Rangada,
yeah, tell me.
But Rangada, that is good, no? In that sense that outward limiting factor is destroyed and the inner true meaning of equality, fraternity is maintained, no?
No, the inner meaning gets distorted into in Christianity particularly, the essence of it is retained, but the essence is retained, but in a modified manner. I won't say distorted manner, but modified manner. Okay? The real liberty is something else. It's spiritual liberty, but it becomes a political liberty in the West. Okay? Freedom also, real freedom and real equality in every cosmic consciousness, not in the political sense or in the government's sense. Okay? So it does get distorted to a certain extent, but diminished, you can certainly say, modified. The influences remain, but not in its pure spiritual aspect. Okay. So, the avatar. So, can we go to it? Yeah.
Yes. I feel that in Christianity, when you become a priest or a nun, your life is made so very difficult. Yeah. Especially some of the monks, they have to starve and, wear certain clothes and only eat this. And since I used to go to one Jain eye camp, I've been in touch with a lot of sadhvis and maharajas. And if you see their life also, on the basis of spirituality, they have to beg for food, mix food. You can't cut your hair. You have to pull your hair out. A sadhviji cannot be touched by a man. If a man touches her, then she has to fast. And, I was called to operate on a sadhviji. All the way from Mumbai, because a man cannot operate on her or she has to go on a fast. So I operated on her, but she will not give us any trouble. So I cannot move my microscope. I have to move her head. So you are putting me into greater trouble, by having all these distorted ideas. So, this is not originally what Christ and Mahavir taught, but it's people later on who came up with all these strict things, and this hierarchy among the priests and nuns and popes. There's so much hypocrisy because the Pope lives a beautiful life, while that poor monk in a monastery in Moshe Michel or any other place has to live in abject poverty because they think poverty is something very good. So there are so many distortions which are created, not by the original avatar, but by people below him. Like Christianity has how many sects, so many, the Seventh-day Adventists and the Protestants. The Protestants happened during Henry VIII because he wanted to get married to Anne Boleyn. So he separated from the Pope. So many distortions, each one has created over the ages, which the avatar has never taught.
Yasmin, what you are saying applies not only to Christianity but all religions. That's the difference between spirituality and religion. In spirituality, there
Yes,
is
yes, all religions.
all religions have these distortions. It's not only,
Including Zoroastrianism.
Because it becomes
Including Zoroastrianism,
yeah.
where if you are not a Zoroastrian, then they think you are not pure. And when a person dies, any non-Zoroastrian cannot come and see his face. That, I mean, it's stupidity. It's real stupidity. But there is distortion in all religions, and each priest, depending on his advantages, will come up with his various rules.
Yeah. It is there in all religions. Even in Zoroastrianism, as you said, there is, for instance, the eternal flame. The flame has to be kept always in a Zoroastrian temple. The flame has to be kept always burning. Now, that is actually a spiritual fact. That keep the flame of aspiration burning in you all the time. So it gets distorted into a physical image. That distortion is there in every religion, including all the Hindu religions. Okay, there is no such thing as Hindu religion, but there are Hindu religions. Okay, all these are also Buddhism. They are all originating from India only, from Bharat. Okay, but they have all got distortions, and plenty of distortions. Yeah. So that's why it is so particular. They say that Mother and Shiva were very, very keen that it should not become a creed. The following Shiva should not be a religion or a creed. They absolutely don't want it to become religion. But at a human level, it becomes a religion. Okay? This chair in which Mother sat, okay, is now put on special occasions. That's not spiritual, that's religion. But still, it is useful. So because it is useful, it is done. Okay? But one was very clear that it is a representation for some who are not absolutely ready. No, it does help. I'm not saying it doesn't help. But there is a big difference between religion and spirituality. That Mother and Shiva both are very, very keen that this should not degenerate. His teaching should not be degenerated into a religion. Very, very clear. Anyway, that's it. So, we still have about 7 minutes. So maybe we can go through the para that we have just now read. No? Let's have a look. The avatar may descend as a great spiritual teacher and savior, the Christ, the Buddha. But always his work leads, after he has finished his earthly manifestation, to a profound and powerful change, not only in the ethical, but in the social and outward life and ideals of the race. The social and outward life has got nothing to do with spiritual life, but it leaves an influence there, powerful change in racing. He may, on the other hand, descend as an incarnation of the divine life, a divine personality and power in its characteristic action for a mission ostensibly social, ethical, political, as is represented in the story of Rama. Rama's idea, his work was to establish the moral code in society, ethical code. Krishna also, okay, political also to a certain extent, as is represented in the story of Rama and Krishna. But always then, this descent becomes in the soul of the race a permanent power for the inner living and the spiritual birth, rebirth. In fact, Rama's and Krishna's physical existence is being doubted, okay, even now by so many people. But Ranganath says it doesn't matter at all. Okay? If you remember that famous thoughts and aphorism statement, the four main events in history are challenged as though they were mythical. But they have the power to even change the mankind. Okay, last one is the colloquy at Kurukshetra will still deliver mankind. Last he says that. Okay? So it may be a myth, but it does leave an influence. That's the important part. It is indeed curious to note that the permanent, vital, universal effect of Buddhism and Christianity has been the force of their ethical, social, and practical ideals and their influence even on the men and the ages which have rejected their religious and spiritual beliefs, as in Europe. Okay? Forms and disciplines. Later, Hinduism, which rejected Buddha, his Sangha and his Dharma, bears the ineffaceable, cannot be effaced, imprint of the social and ethical influence of Buddhism and its effect on the ideas and the life of the race. Okay? We do have the idea of compassion and deliverance. While in modern Europe, Christian only in name. So the ideas are all forgotten. But the basic, some ideas in Christianity have percolated down. Humanitarianism is a translation into the ethical and social sphere and the aspiration to liberty, equality, fraternity, the translation into the social and political sphere of the spiritual truths of Christianity. The latter especially being affected by men who aggressively rejected the Christian religion and spiritual discipline, and by an age which in its intellectual effort of emancipation tried to get rid of Christianity as a creed. The intellectual effort of emancipation, the idea of freedom. On the other hand, the life of Rama and Krishna belongs to the prehistoric past, which has come down only in poetry and legend, and may even be regarded as myths, even may be regarded. But it is quite immaterial whether we regard them as myths or historical facts, because their permanent truth and value lie in their persistence as a spiritual form, presence, influence in the inner consciousness of the race and the life of the human soul. This is that quotation that in Thoughts and Aphorisms, those four truths. That's very, very, I'll find out and we'll refer to it next time when we come, next Saturday. Avatarhood is a fact of divine life. It's a very clear statement, categorical statement. Others may not believe, other religions may not believe that the divine can come down into a human body. But the avatarhood is a fact of divine life and consciousness, which may realize itself in an outward action, but must persist when that action is over and has done its work in a spiritual influence, or may realize itself in a spiritual influence and teaching, but must then have its permanent effect, even when the new religion or discipline is exhausted. In the thought, it leaves permanent effect in the thought, temperament, and outward life of mankind.
Ranganath has left. We have to call him up and inform him. No? Shall I call him up?
Yes, call and tell him that it's 8:40 and since you disappeared, we are also all disappearing.
Okay, au revoir, all of you. Have a nice weekend.